Welcome to the Defence Connect podcast, Australia's leading voice in national security and defence industry intelligence, direct from the nation's top policy and business experts.
Welcome back to the Defence Connect podcast. You're here with senior journalist Robert Dougherty, and we have a guest direct from IATA, so direct from the Australian Defence Industry Awards. It's Academic of the Year, Dr. Oleksandra Molloy from the University of New South Wales. So, Dr. Molloy, you're a senior lecturer there. You've done a lot of work, multidisciplinary research with defence, and that's particularly in the fields of uncrewed systems, drones, and the use of those drones in Ukraine. And you've done some of that work with the Australian Army Research Centre as well. Welcome to the podcast, Dr. Molloy.
Hi, Robert, and it's great to be here today. Thank you for inviting me.
I see here as well, I mean, your career has taken you, there's a lot of study you've undertaken. I can see human factors research with the Faculty of Engineering, University of Nottingham. There's University of New South Wales, obviously, the Flight Academy of National Aviation University in Ukraine, and Academy of Pedagogical University. Yeah, that's a hard one as well. That's also in Ukraine. But there's a lot there, isn't there? And I can see that you would be one of the foremost experts in drone use in Australia, I would have to say. For people that are listening, what are those main fields of research that you specialise in, and your research that really led to the Australian Defence Industry Awards Academic of the Year Award?
Yeah, sure. And I appreciate you mentioning that, because I think what's important to understand is it's continuous learning. It's continuous adapting to new technologies or trends or pedagogical approaches, whether it's education, research, that inform one another. And that multidisciplinary approach, if you combine it. So I had a chance to learn about humanities and science and engineering, like a lot of different business, international affairs, and combining it in the context. I think that what's really has led to the point. And I've also always been thinking about, the way what we do has to have a practical impact. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you don't see the impact of your work short term. It may be long term. You see some policies are changes or not changes, but, in the industry that is quite critical to national security, defence, and ultimately saving lives for many people, around the world. So you definitely pay attention to the new approaches and new emerging technologies. And, a combination of, education, aviation, human factors that really lead us to the implementation of the relationship between the human and technology, but also the way how these technologies adapt at the modern battlefield. And look, to be honest, I've never thought of doing a specific research, but having said that, it just came to the point that this was the technology of much use and definitely something that really emerged. And sometimes, it can come and disappear, and probably we won't hear much, but not in this case. So that was definitely something to look into. It
seems like this kind of research is really taken, it's the forefront of technology at the moment, particularly, military operations and in defence industry. Was it something that you saw along the way and thought, as you said, you were covering a lot of areas, but you decided to specialise on this one in particular because you saw that it would be such a large component of the future? Or was it more, I guess, a gradual shift that this became more and more important along the way?
I think it's a bit of a mix of both, to be honest with you, because it's very hard to predict what will be effective in these contexts of operation. But I've definitely seen that there is a specific importance that it is developing at rapid pace and rapid phase. Look, let's just get back to 2014. So when there was the first basically Russian invasion in Ukraine, there were no talks about drones, although there were some of their intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance. They probably didn't really pay much of the difference, but the volunteers were experimenting. And I think that desire to create something new, to innovate, came to the point. But, I think...
Did you know at that point that it would be as important as it would become, in 2014, 2015?
I think I started paying attention, and I think that's more as well international community, national community, both in commercial and military applications. That's probably since 2012, 13, 14, where these technologies were emerging and they were helping in other areas, like as simple as agriculture, right? So something that you can replace with technology to assist you, so to make it faster, more effective and efficient, and just make some kind of a difference. So these technologies proliferated in the commercial use.
Right.
And I was aware of them, and not at the time that really thought that they would make such a difference, 6, 8 years ongoing. But since 2022, because I worked at National Aviation University in Ukraine, I maintained communication channels, and I knew, let's say Ukraine had 400 pilots at the time, and to be perfectly honest, I wanted to monitor the air power and I wanted to monitor situation from the aviation perspective. There was no specific interest just to drones, to be honest with you. But even my colleagues and pilots who were flying the old Soviet MiG-29s, fighter jets.
The Falcon.
And other technologies, and of course learning for the new fighter jets. So I think that was even particularly most important to look at, how these air power will be established and won't be established, and we've seen that it won't really progress to that level. But what I noticed, and again, what appeared every day, there are so news that we don't know here in Australia. So it's like, of course, thousands, and it's very hard to keep up. But the news about drones I've seen every day, and I think that's where my interest in 2022 straight away. I thought, first I want to explore what types, how that works, and first, what we can learn just generally, like Australia, NATO countries, and everyone else. But there are so many, particularly like lessons to learn, and not necessarily just drones itself, right? So it's just a little bit more into ecosystem and training and just willingness to learn, right, and adapt. So I think that really has driven that urge to continue this research. And at that time, I actually would like to mention that I was very impressed that Australian Army Research Centre were looking at these questions.
Oh, we're ahead of the curve there.
And they were quite ahead. And, one of their questions that they were looking at, one of their trends and grants was looking at just generically about lessons learned from Ukraine. And definitely my expertise has brought an important imperative
You had
towards...
two research papers as well, didn't you? Drones in the modern warfare and the effectiveness. Was it effectiveness in drones in modern warfare?
Yes, so the
2024?
Two research publications with them, and continue working on that part, because unfortunately it's continuously changing. So more on the way, but we were able to publish
that would have been
research.
A big year. I mean, to put those two together in 2024. What was it like? Obviously, putting those together, and then on the back of that, also then being acknowledged by the defence industry with the Academic of the Year award at IATA.
Yeah, I think it was a big year, and I felt that will be very important. I really wanted to share that knowledge and that information with the broader community, with the defence policy agencies, but also ADF and BRIN and broader. To be honest, because we have managed to really gauge quite a significant interest in the point. So I think that's important to understand that at the official level. So there is very little to no research-based, evidence, and that's completely fair because it's a challenging topic. You know, in
Still
my
evolving,
case,
isn't
yeah.
it?
So let's just talk that obtaining defence human ethics research takes at least 10 months or so. So out of 12-month project, so it's quite an intense work, and it's a serious and very important impact if you are talking about research. Although, of course, as many experts around the world, so they can analyze and just try to critically think and bring their perspective, and that's fair. But, I still believe, only after the end we will be able to gauge those lessons and understand all the full picture. There is a lot of known, but there is a lot of unknown. But what is important, we just can't wait, We need to continuously adapt and change. And that was the key point, and some recommendation that I provided with the occasional paper was to consider for any changes or implementations and really moving into these directions. So that's really to inform the future policy and potentially maybe the Defence Strategic Review. And
It was I recall your speech. You spoke very briefly at IATA, and I recall you spoke a lot about Ukraine. It was received well by the audience. It was probably sort of 800 people there. And that was definitely a standout on the night. What was your feelings? Did you have that prepared, or was it sort of more off the cuff that you were speaking?
So I think as academics we're always prepared.
Yeah. Okay.
No, but in the particular moment, so you definitely just have your feelings and have your thoughts out there. And, one of the most important paragraphs to thank my family, my husband, I forgot completely, just took out. And but that highlights, that opportunity that, the traditional roles, they're changing, and that support that provided by family, just really helps you to achieve these endeavors, which is great. But, I think that's the fact that really I am very grateful to, and that's just the point that goes from the heart and really personal. So really highlights those various and versatile aspects of what this award, really means to me.
So I remember as well the British High Commissioner, Dame Sarah McIntosh, also personally referenced you in her speech on the night. What was your thought there? Were you sort of listening to that and expecting – I mean, it wouldn't be possible to expect to be mentioned, but you were definitely singled out as one of the award winners there. What was that like?
That was a great honor, I think, and that was really unexpectedly pleasant moment, and really highlights that impact, broader than, let's say, Ukraine or Australia, and highlight those partnerships that UK also have dedicated to Ukraine in terms of support and to the people. But also it highlights that impact of work that's been done, and it definitely was surprising. But I contribute to various events and leadership events like British High Commission do for young generation and the next generation.
Right, yep.
Yes, so although I don't think she was aware of that, I had a chance to meet her afterwards because she's a new coming High Commissioner and will take over.
Are there opportunities there, do you think? Yeah.
There are opportunities, I think, for defence leaders to attend these programs. There are great opportunities to hear from the defence experts and also from a professional development perspective. Yes, so I think they are conducting, this is one of their programs, but I do know that they really pay attention to the current development of their next generation professionals, but also to the defence industry and, that mateship that it's shown. So definitely.
It seems like, just from talking about the way that the drone industry is evolving, it seems like, obviously Ukraine and Russia are pushing ahead with quite advanced drone technology. They're evolving every day, the sword and the shield wise, able to improve their attacking, but also, their defensive drone aspects. And it kind of sounds like, we're still playing a bit of catch up in the rest of the world, and that's why we need those leaders to, our military leaders to attend these kind of conferences and I guess workshops. When we come back after this ad break, we'll talk a bit more about drones and how they're evolving in Ukraine and what features we're consistently seeing now that we might not have seen at the start of the war. Welcome back to the Defence Connect podcast. You've got Robert Dougherty here, Senior Journalist, Defence Connect, and Dr. Molloy from University of New South Wales, and Academic of the Year. Very prestigious. Congratulations. Let's talk a bit about drones. The drones in Ukraine, we've seen an evolution from the initial aspects. We're talking about 2014-15, when they were mostly reconnaissance use. Now we can see heavy use of first-person drones that use explosive impacts and things like that. That was something we saw in sort of 2023, 2024. We're now seeing, just from my own knowledge, I would say more use of fibre optic cable to prevent electronic warfare. And most recently, perhaps we're looking at some form of autonomy taking over, the final approach of drones and things like that, and different features there. What are you seeing in your research, Dr. Molloy, in terms of the development of drones?
Yeah, this is the topic I've been following quite closely. And if we get back to the beginning of the podcast when I mentioned 2014, so definitely there were those systems that were reported. In fact, so my brother-in-law used to be a military, and he didn't have the systems. He used to defend Donetsk airport and Ilovaisk battle. So it's really those tools that the warfighter needs to support them, right? So it's the battlefield that are important, and the drones evolve from being just observers in the sky, like intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance, to really active combatant, right? So I always say that it's always great to put that technology at the front line and being able to sustain those developments. And there are learnings in different perspectives. So the types of drones evolved, the ways of operation, the tactics, but also the contexts of operation. So, for example, if one brigade has to operate near the water, river, so they'll use, river drones.
Wow.
Even that way.
It's become very specialized.
Yeah, they also call like kind of submarines, but it's different to what we call them. And they would be like more water drones and a combination of both aerial and multi-domain drones. But if you need to operate, in the open area and vast majority of fields, like open fields, of course, there will be fast FPV drones. They really dominate their battlefield today. And combination of fiber optic drones definitely, is one of the most effective in a way that they inflict lots of damages to the different ammunition, and also to the losses of life from the enemy perspective. But we need to understand that the battlefield is visible. I wouldn't call it transparent because we don't really know what is in the minds of many soldiers, but it's definitely visible 24/7. Anything that is moving far and close, so there are different distances, so it's nowhere is safe, whether it's a front line or whether it's deep in any city in Ukraine, and we need to really have it in perspective.
It's heavily surveilled.
Yeah, heavily surveilled, but the threat is everywhere on any territory. So, first, of course, you need to be able to defend critical infrastructure, energy facilities, and being able to do it out of the cities. So I think the important focus as we talk about drones is really counter-drone systems. I really talk about both of them at the same time. Yes. And as the drones are evolving, so those systems to defense against them are evolving. And at times when we've seen that Russia has stepped up in its scalability of drones, it's more important to be 2 steps ahead to be able to intercept those drones. And that's one of the recent trends because it's very hard to keep up. So there is scalability of systems that work. So both Ukraine and Russia found their specific technologies. Again, it will be FPV drones and long-range drones for Ukraine, and ISR continuously there, but also bomber drones, so more like that agriculture type,
like a heavy lift,
multi-rotor drones. That they prefer operating them because they just do that. But I'm talking to drone operators and commanders quite often in Ukraine, and I want to mention as well that one of the important part is really moving to that now quality and ecosystem. Of course, as it emerged from different types and quantity of various types of drones. So, just put in perspective as an example, in 2022 there were about 7 companies who were just mainly specializing in all different commercial types of drones, but then it has increased in miltech sector, and everyone was engaged in providing any components, to drones and working on the development of technologies, so to be able to support that. So I think it's important to mention that now the strengths are moving towards the quality and, of course, those systems that work.
Okay.
And of course, opens that opportunity for other countries' experimentation. However, we need to remember that the key is to protect lives, so there is no time to experiment. But other countries can do that, and that's a really important part. Another perspective, an example that I want to show is that there is a bit of a juxtaposition between the terms. So, for example, long-term drones. So it's no longer those that fly for 4,000 kilometers. It's those that can be operated effectively with a surprise, like a spiderweb operation.
Okay, that's different. Yeah, it's changing it for sure.
Yeah.
Why is that necessary to have that, distinction, I guess?
Look, I think that highlights that, again, the importance of the system. So, and to realize that they have shaped their modern warfare, and they will continue to in the future. So they have become like one of the important weapons and parts of integration with the crewed, uncrewed, or others, so that are able to successfully achieve tactical, operational, and strategic effects of each parties.
Okay. I think I did recently see there's a Test in Ukraine platform that's been launched for companies to become involved in.
Yes, so there has been recently that platform emerged, and I think it's something that Ukraine has been leveraging quite well is their collaboration with allied partners, so, Europe, NATO, and globally, including Australia, so part as well, Drone Capability Coalition and other partners, test facilities in Latvia, for example, so that allows to test the specific technologies of need, that will bring a specific feedback. I wanted to highlight that, some companies may say being in Ukraine tested battlefield, so on and so forth, but unfortunately we don't want that to take too far because we don't know what feedback was, whether it was effective or not. So just that opportunity is not, that 100% effective. And because technologies and tactics are changing, so there are continuous iteration of the systems and elements that are developing and in place. I think it will provide, though, again, just broader opportunities for other countries, including Australia. So I think one of my call for action is a continuous learn, from Ukraine and with Ukraine, and that remains at the forefront. So looking at their, adversaries, North Korea is actively working with Russia and learning actively in the battlefield in Kursk. So it's just like one part, but that provides that chance for the industry to develop their sovereign capabilities and sovereign industries, but also contribute to the developments on the battlefield in Ukraine.
What are some of those features you mentioned that Australian companies should be looking for, or Australian strategy groups should be looking at? I think I recently saw that, we have a bit of a change towards drones having their own sort of autonomy in the last sort of 500 metres with FPV aerial drones. There might be some change of tactics with, we've seen marine drones from Ukraine able to take down aircraft with surface-to-air missiles recently within the last couple of months. What are some of the changes that you're noticing, some of the new features that are coming in?
I think what's important, and it's continuous, is research and development.
Okay.
there could be a lot of innovation in the process, but until they are there and effective and could be really useful at the battlefield, then that's point when we'll see the development. So there is some portion that is classified, and unfortunately to the open it is very hard to know whether or not, but there are a lot of experimentation, let me put it that way, and there is a lot coming. But what we have seen is that the AI, let's say, based drone or those autonomous systems at the moment that don't really allow to be replaced by, those specific technologies. Like, again, put in perspective, in 2024, let's say 1.5 million drones was procured in Ukraine, but only like 10,000 of them were AI-based driven.
Yes,
So we're talking
early.
about...
It's very early.
It's very early. So what we don't see a specific fully autonomous drones. However, having said that, there are still those specific features. However, there are still those specific features from AI-based drone, whether it's automatic target recognition or autonomous navigation, and those systems to support decision-making. I think they all have that place to be and see whether they really are advanced and help the warfighters at the front. But we'll see probably more in the developing. At the same time, one of my drone operator colleagues said, "No AI, no problems." We'll see.
Okay. I remember you talking very briefly about, the heavily surveilled environment of drones in Ukraine, and in particular, those open areas where FPV drones are used. Is there an almost stalemate effect of that happening in terms of, if both sides using FPV drones, nobody is sort of, able to advance or withdraw? Is that something that you've come across in your research?
Yes, I came across that both sides really heavily are using this type of drones, and I think that is that first line of contact that is operating both EW system, counter drone systems that prevent from attacks, and there are like flying in thousands. I was given an example that in Bakhmut, so that location was so dense, but in any other battle that is currently happening in Ukraine, drones are at the forefront, and they are used thousands to be able to, doing their offensive operations. But, Ukraine mainly are using them for defensive operations and really just defense against those. Again, I'll bring the examples of a recently increased number of Shaheds to defend, their critical infrastructure, because Russia doesn't really care where they're striking. But when Ukraine are using... different objectives. Yeah, but when Ukraine using them, they are using for strategic objective, of course, if it is even deep strike deep inside Russia. So there will be military bases, all refineries that help to sponsor the war and provide that funding. So there are different objectives and parts, but they are. And I think it's something that many Western people probably don't realize. It's not like 1 or 2, 10, 100. They are in thousands and 24/7, so on the ground. So you need both. First, you need to operate and continuously maintain that drone superiority, but also you need to be able to just defend against them.
Okay. We'll go to a quick ad break, and just on that drone supremacy or superiority, we'll come back and we'll talk about how the Australian industry is tackling this issue, and some of the, elements of how the Department of Defence is looking at it, and how the Australian sector is looking at it. Welcome back to the Defence Connect podcast. You've got Robert Dougherty here with Dr. Molloy from University of New South Wales, Academic of the Year from ADIA. We're talking about how the Australian defence industry is placed to work and operate in terms of its drone capacity, its drone research. What have you seen in your own findings, Dr. Molloy? Are we moving at a rate that is able to keep pace with drone innovation that's happening around the world? Obviously, it's very hard to keep pace with Ukraine and Russia because they have their own individual motivations, shall we say, defence and attack. But how do you see Australia placed in terms of drone development?
That's an excellent question, and I'd like to highlight that. My expertise is more in relation to what Ukraine is doing and what potentially could Australia, NATO countries and others learn from that. And if we zoom out, it's a little bit broader perspective. So that's different elements, sensors, software, and the ecosystem that could be built to provide a quality system to be operated. Okay. It's about training. How do we train operators as well to be able to keep up with the latest changes and provide the systems? And
perhaps I'll rephrase. What's needed, I guess, to enable that? Yeah. And
one excellent point is that in industry, in commercial sites and defence industry, I've seen a lot of talented professionals who are working on this. So some of the even main key players are even located in Australia in terms of developing of the uncrewed systems, flight controllers and other elements, and those who are producing both drones and counter-drone systems. So what we need in Australia, well, first we need drones of different types, of all types. Yep. And we need to understand that we need to try to keep up with the pace in terms of the change and thinking about integration in the forest structure and how these systems could be implemented in the current way of operation, and not saying that these works are not in the making. So, of course, there are so many various documents that shows on the need of these systems. But it's more about really just do it, it's about these changes and the implementation and really focusing on both, balanced approach, high-end systems and expensive, which is great. But even think about any research project takes from, 1 to 3 years to develop, and these systems take time.
Is it about testing a few different programs and then applying that long-term sort of study? Or is it about, maybe testing a lot of different programs to seeing which one works system-wise with capability? Or perhaps even is it copying, an approach from Ukraine or
Look, I think we need to take that baseline from what has already been done. So, and that's why it's important to be aware of what has been done and work with our partners, in Ukraine. So that's ultimately important to continuously develop that. So if you look even on Western learning, so NATO has established NATO Ukraine Center, educational, and potentially our Australian and UK personnel are learning together with Ukraine as part of
Operation Kudu.
Operation Kudu, but it's inter.
That's okay.
Doesn't matter. Okay, I'll just say that. Also, Australian and UK personnel are learning with Ukraine as part of their operations in the UK, like Kudu and so on and so forth. I think there are many opportunities. We just need to have that will and actions to be able to bring it into the operation. And we really need to start experimenting in specific locations and get it to the warfighters and just train.
I can see with the current Australian Defence Force we have access to surveillance drones. We certainly have that. There's some development of larger UCAV, unmanned, uncrewed aerial vehicles such as Ghostbat. I don't believe we've seen much technology relating to FPV drones. Certainly there's a drone racing team, but I don't think there's a sort of a combat model there. What are some of the areas that we should be looking at in terms of, Ukraine's development when it progressed from that 2014-15 period to now? some of the priority systems.
You mentioned ADF drone racing team, and I would really like to compliment them because they are the best around the world based on these recent competitions and how they sustain this development. So we have people who can operate these systems, right? But I don't believe we have any FPV drone or even any part that is integrated in a current like operations or other special what is it? Special.
Special operations. It now occurs to me that, we have a lot of personnel at Operation Talisman Sabre right now between the interoperability between UK forces, American forces, Japanese. Everyone is here in Australia for this exercise. But I haven't seen any drone operations that are that similar, Ukraine FPV or as you're saying, UGV operations or anything like that. That might be a concern perhaps.
Yeah, I have seen some examples where they've been testing some kind of drones, so part of, maybe as loitering munition or ISR, so it's very hard to say. But actually my Ukrainian friends noticed that in their use, and first they complimented that Australia has started experimentations, and at least we've seen that it's there, but definitely not at the scale as it needed. And the systems, even to launch the systems are quite big, and I'm not really sure how the operations really plan to do that. But it's a great step ahead. We just need to speed up that implementation and testing. And I think, even every commander needs to be aware or know what to do with this system, how to defend against these systems, what kits are available, and what every infantry can do to defend against this. So it's training, it's strategies, it's investment. And look, one difference between Australia and I returned from Western conferences just recently in NATO countries is that they are thinking about the uncrewed systems as an important element in the future wars. And they're thinking about scalability, how to sustain, how to integrate, how can we do it very quickly and learn with Ukraine. I think in Australia we are still figuring out whether or not the systems may contribute and potentially which systems will be important.
Okay. It's I imagine there are some similarities there we can draw. Ukraine is obviously fighting a numerical force that's a lot larger than itself, and so some of these drones are going to be a part of basically a levelling of that playing field. I imagine any future conflict that Australia is in, we're going to face a numerically superior force just because we don't have a lot of those recruits. We may only have 60,000, 65,000 defence members. So I can see that this is an important thing that the ADF has to sort of be aware of, moving forward, that some of these systems are going to be able to level the playing field. Yeah,
and I call that, they play a great role as force multiplier and cost multiplier. So we don't necessarily have big mass in terms of workforce as well. And I think these systems really can be helpful in specific operations in the future, that's for sure. The question is what would be more context-based, and to figure out how to implement that and really move with the latest world innovations and adaptations. And I think we come back to the beginning of the podcast. So willingness, learning to learn and really have those strategies in place, but most importantly, actions and changes today.
It's been a bit of a theme throughout the podcast today, I think. Some of those actions, your next actions, what are your next got planned, Dr. Molloy, over the next sort of 12 months? Are you locked in any speaking engagements? Are you keeping your eye out for any programs in particular?
That's an excellent question. So I think just coming back from our NATO forum on the use of drones was an important imperative, but also contribution that I was able to bring to the learnings, and also participation in the Drone Capability Coalition Summit. So that was a great highlight, and that's where Australia is part of as well. So I think that's important parts. And definitely in terms of the upcoming conferences, so there are a number of speaking events lining
you're
up.
booked in. Yeah.
There are still some spots available if needed, but I think that highlights really that interest in the impact of the work that is done, and that contributes to really practical implications. So both in US in particular, I'm going there in August, and with the recent announcements, that's those bold actions that were, it's really shown that at least movement from just documents to the actions. They still have lots of challenges of how, but that's going to be there. And we need to remember that, Ukrainians are leading this innovation, so we really need to have that learning hub together and working and keeping up and translating in the context of Australia. In terms of research, I am continuing doing the research on the use of drones. We are in 2025 now.
Is there a snippet we can have from that? What are you in particular looking at for that?
I'm continuing the 2.0 version. So, and as many or some people mention, it was in 2024, but we are in 2025. And of course, as academics and researchers, you have to keep up with that pace. And
I imagine there's a lot of
days and nights
being made.
to be able to do that. But most importantly as well, I think another important part that I work is part of the Defence Trailblazer projects, working with industry. Like, again, we mentioned AI, but AI-based technology to assess cognitive load of US operators, doing that with CAE, with industry. And it's, again, a great example what Australia can do well, and its collaborative projects between academia and industry to solve defence-related projects, and definitely continue an important work to inform the future policies and actions.
That's the right path. I think we need to head down. Have an expert that's in our corner, helping our industry flourish in the drone age. I'd like to thank you for coming on the podcast. Thanks very much, Dr. Molloy, and congratulations once again, Academic of the Year, and well deserved.
Thank you so much, Robert. Really appreciate that. Thank you.